California. She is a Libertarian. She did run in a nonpartisan race, but she is one of our many elected Libertarians from the 2020 election. So, Kalish, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on here. Yeah, like you said, just newly Councilwoman-elect for Hanford, California. That's basically right here in the middle of California. Like, literally, you could drop a point here in the most central point. But yeah, decided to run back in 2016, in fact, for city council back then, and definitely learned a lot from that race of what not to do and how to do things differently. So when I ran this year in 2020, it was definitely very well organized campaign, and obviously we got the results that we wanted out of it. But yeah, former business owner, and that's kind of what threw me into the local politics scene, in fact.
Okay, good. So I'm sure everyone watching here is probably going to want to know, what sort of things were you campaigning on that resonated well with voters in your city?
Well, one of my biggest focuses was for small business. We have a really charming downtown with a lot of history to it. We have some fantastic historic buildings, and that's really what made me fall in love with this town. So that was one of my biggest things, just cutting back on the red tape that we have here. We have some of the most onerous restrictions around, and in California, that's saying a lot too. So for us to have a small town and be dealing with all this uphill battle that is just getting a business going, that was definitely something I was passionate about. And then we've got some, like, our as Pat Ford was calling it the other day, lunchbox issues. So our local issues and stuff. We have a massive park land out here where only half of it's developed. 18 acres out of 36 is developed, and the people have been wanting it developed for years, and it's been kicking the can down the road for so long. And that was one of those things where I'm stepping in and really want to see something done. But from a Libertarian perspective, though, we've got a private organization that wants to go in there, and I wholeheartedly back them on wanting to do it that way and not spend city government monies, because when we get into like prevailing wages and all that stuff, it really increases the amount, the cost. So yeah, that was one of those other big things too, where people were really passionate about this piece of land. It's been around for decades, and they really want to see it developed and want to see a council person actually, get behind them on that idea.
Okay. What sort of challenges do you think you're gonna face being a Libertarian leaning person in city government? And I know when I talked with Kara from Minnesota the other night, she said, people were at first were like, oh, well, we elected a Libertarian, what's she going to do? So what sort of initiatives do you think are going to be the first things that you're going to go for? And how would you explain those to your constituents?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, with the issue with getting our park over here rezoned back to actual parkland, a while back, they rezoned it as residential and surplus, and then of course the properties just sat there. But yeah, that's definitely one of those things that we've got to get reversed back to being parkland, and then giving this organization a chance to develop it. Rolling back a lot of the regulations, and right here we're in California, and California loves its regulations, and it loves its fees, and it loves to taxes and those kinds of things, and grow government. So that is definitely going to be one of those things where I'll be pushing back on that a lot. Looking at ways to increase the volume of taxes, the amount that we're taking in just through letting businesses open up versus actually raising taxes. But we've had that come up multiple times where people have wanted to raise taxes, to offset the growing costs of government. And so that's definitely going to be one of those things that I'll be pushing back on. And we're in a more conservative area of California, so I think that a lot of these ideals, though, really resonate with the people here. So that won't be as much of an issue, luckily.
Okay. For anyone who's watching and might be thinking about running for city council or any other elected office, what advice would you give to Libertarians out there anywhere that are considering running for 2021 to 324? I would think anyone should be starting to plan it out as far as they can, in my opinion. So what advice would you give them?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that as libertarians, we have our best shot at the local level. So those are the things that you're going to want to look at. And there's different things. There's smaller races too than even city council that you can go after. So, and even just getting placed on commissions. Like we have 3 different commissions here that are appointed by council, our planning commission, our parks and rec, and then we've got our traffic commission as well. And so those are ones that you can always apply for. Just basically things that get you more and more involved with your community. I am very hands-on with the community, and that's what people really liked about me too when they started researching me. They saw that I have been so involved and passionate about trying to save our historic buildings or just different things. I got, helped out with the Habitat for Humanity here too. It was the first time that we've had a build like that since 2008. So all these little things that, they mean a lot to your community, and putting yourself out there, and, and it helps too, because you are now learning a little bit more about what your neighbors need, what your neighbors' wants are. So you know how, what resonates with them. So yeah, just being as involved as you can with your community will be really big for you.
Okay. What sort of scare things did people come to you and were probably like the biggest misconceptions they had about libertarians? If they heard you were a libertarian, being a nonpartisan race, but usually people ask you like, what party are you in when you're running? So what were some of the misconceptions that you ran into, and what advice would you give to people to overcome them, or how do you overcome them?
Yeah, I think that we had 2 different things. One, a lot of people don't even know what a libertarian is, and then we've got that misnomer because there's liberalish, that kind of that word in libertarian that throws people off. So they automatically think that we're liberal in that sense, which isn't. When it comes to fiscal policy, though, we're more conservative than the conservatives even are. So that's one thing to set the record straight. But the other big issue, I think, is because of this presidential race and how divisive everybody was. They just wanted to see that you were, at least in my area, because again, it's a conservative area. They wanted to see that I was Republican and that I was going to be voting for Trump, and that was the thing that they were the most concerned about. Where we wanted to focus more on the local issues. That's the executive branch of the federal government. That doesn't have much to do with what we do here at the local level. So just really getting to them about things that matter to them, what matters to their in their day-to-day life, and seeing that we see eye to eye on those issues. That was really helpful too.
Okay, good. I think a lot of people are working. I know myself, I'm working on my own campaign. I've been talking to other candidates out there that are working on theirs as well. What sort of information or steps did you take that you think you should give to advice to other candidates? Yes, we know we got to be out there, and we should be hitting boots on the ground and talking and door knocking. What sort of other things do you wish you knew before you started, I guess you could say?
Well, like I said, since this was my second go around, I learned a lot from the first one. So we got started early. That helped out, especially not knowing that COVID was going to hit. So we had already started our fundraising, but got my campaign manager, Brent Olson. So he did a phenomenal job. But getting your team assembled is really important. Starting with your campaign manager and then kind of working your way down there too, and recruiting the volunteers that you're going to need, and then starting to fundraise as well. We can't be shy about fundraising. Like that was one of the most difficult things I felt I had to do, and I think a lot of other candidates hate that too. We don't want to go out and ask for money from people, but you just have to. We needed money for flyers and for all the literature and those kinds of things. So getting started early, getting yourself organized, having your fundraising going on. A donor box is great too, having a website, having your Facebook page. links so that people can easily access you and send money your way is really, a great way to go as well.
Okay. I assume you plan on continuing to run and stay on city council. Do you, what advice would you give for people getting involved in the party, I guess, for building infrastructure locally? Was the party available to you in the state to help build your campaign, or at least volunteer for your campaign, or or are you in the process of building that in your area as well?
Yeah, I got to give a huge shout out to Libertarians, both local and nationwide. They contributed most of the funding for our campaign, and we came up with about 16 grand, which is pretty substantial for a local race like mine, where most of the time they're only raising about 6 grand or so. So we did a bang out job with that. Got a lot of support financially from people. I got the Mises Caucus too, where they got behind with doing phone banking for us because they're remote. And then when it came to the state party, yes, they definitely were. They're backing me in endorsements, and we had volunteers from up and down the state, in fact, coming and helping out with the door knocking. And then we've got our local affiliate. I've been chair of Kings County for the last couple of years, and most of my team was Libertarians, and then it was a really cool mix though too, where we had some really staunch Republicans and Democrats as well that were on the team. So really diverse amount of characters, but for the most part, it was the Libertarian Party that really got behind me, and that was really helpful and refreshing. Considering 2016 there was nothing. They really didn't have anything to help out with their local candidates. So, they've made great strides in the last few years. So a lot of help from them.
Okay. Any advice to people looking to build up their county party? If you've seen changes in there, what sort of things do you think help bring that about in your local area for anyone trying to build up their county parties right now?
I think being vocal in your community, going to city council meetings, speaking as maybe an officer from your, if you take on a treasurer, secretary, vice chair, chair position, and going to your city council meetings, going to the county supervisor meetings, and going and speaking up, because that's putting the libertarian message out there directly, and people are seeing how it affects them in their personal lives. So we've built up a lot of, I think, good publicity for the Libertarian Party locally. I love telling the story about how years ago I had some guy call me up, and he was like, "Don't take this the wrong way, but your city is crazy when the Libertarians are the voice of reason." It just but it just showed that we had to really work on our messaging and dispel some misnomers and stuff.
Yep. And I think that's important for all of us. We have to get over those, the misconceptions, the misunderstandings. I know I announced for my race, I got a phone call from a city councilman in one of the towns in my county, and he's like, "So you're running as a libertarian. Do you know what a libertarian is, or did you just pick up the label?" Like he's a Democrat. And I put it together, and he's like, "So you're running as a libertarian. Do you know, like, their things?" And so we discussed. He's like, "Oh, so you're like really serious about this?" I said, "Oh, I'm very serious." So like even he was concerned about the misconception that someone might be applying it to themselves and not knowing what it was. So he reached out to try and make sure. I was like, "Well, we're good there." But no, I think all of us can work on discussing, listening to people, listening to their problems. And then looking at what their problem is and understanding that generally giving them more choice is almost always going to be a better solution. And when you look at it that way and you look for how can we give people more choices, we can almost always find a better solution than what most people are offering. Then, in my opinion, I think that's typically the way it's always going to go. How about you? What sort of things do you think that I know Spike has said it a lot this year, listen, reflect back, and then, present solutions. Do you have anything to add on that sort of topic of, conveying that message?
Yeah, I think that we have all needed to work on our messaging a lot better. We're super fact based, but we're living in a culture of AOC with her. I'd rather be would you say I'd rather be morally correct than factually right or something weird like that.
Mhm.
But people, you need to get people in the fields, and so when we talk about things like minimum wage, we tend to stick with the topic of, yeah, well, minimum wage, it hurts businesses and it does that and it causes inflation and all that kind of stuff. But people really just hear, oh, so you just want people to stay poor, But
Mhm.
what you have to do though is you look at it from a different way and relate it back to them. Minimum wage. Most people don't realize the history of minimum wage, and it started off as a very racist thing. It was to price out people of color of jobs and preserve it for whites. And there's a lot of statements out there. A lot of those things. Sorry, I've got a fly attacking me. Welcome to the Central Valley. But so yeah, when they find out the history of it, then it changes. It might change how they. Oh god, this thing's relentless. It was like Pence's fly. Pence's fly is attacking me right now.
Mike Pence's fly, Donald Trump's, and Joe Biden's fly, and Hillary Clinton's fly. I think it's the
Yeah.
fly that keeps coming to the debates. They're always there. So.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, the thing was just not lighting up. But yeah. But yeah, you relate it back to, you show the history of it and what minimum wage has done to people and what it continues to do to people, though, where it still prices, it does its job. It still prices people out of people of color out of work. It prices younger people trying to get into the workforce out of work. And that's just an example of where we need to look at how we're messaging and how we're trying to convey it. Because really, like, we are wanting to look out for other people, but the way that we explain it has been incorrect.
Yeah, I have some conversations when I have some people, and like a lot of times they'll say, I ask them like, what is the end that you're wanting? And I say, okay, so I can agree with you on some on these ends that you seek, but let's talk
Mhm.
about the means by which we get there. What do we lose of ourselves to get to these ends? And how can we get there while still, treating people well and giving them the choices and treating them with dignity and respect and not forcing them into anything? I think those are strong messages that resonate well with people. And I appreciate the efforts that you have done this last year, last couple of years here, getting elected, just showing people that it's possible, I think is a big thing. Every little election is another chink in the armor of the duopoly. So I thank you for the efforts, and I look forward to seeing where your political career there goes in California. So, do you have any last minute words for everyone here watching tonight, or last minute closing advice?
Oh, I feel like I've gone over most of my little talking points with this, but yeah, just local level, and then obviously if you're running for a higher office too, just nabbing a really good messaging. That I think that's very much important. That's getting our message out to a broader audience as well. But yeah, just get organized. Don't be shy about getting the donations that you need, and don't be afraid to go against the status quo. I was getting a lot of criticism for starting my campaign so early because nobody does that, but I didn't care.
I,
I wanted to make sure I won, and
well,
it worked out.
I agree. If we wait until 8-9 months before the election, like Republicans and Democrats do, if we keep playing the game like they do, I don't think we're going to win the game. So
Mm-mm.
I agree myself. I filed my letter of intent the day after the eletion for
Great.
2022. So I'm working
Yay.
on it myself, and I encourage
Yeah.
everyone else out there, if you haven't, go to lp.org, run for office. If you haven't yet, sign up, join, and get involved in your state affiliate. And with that, guys, thank you for being here, Kalish, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Have a good night.